I'm going through the Rockies, and you just can't help but be struck with the wonder of God.
Yeah, it's pretty
in that
incredible to
moment.
drive through there.
And it didn't take me very long before I hit Banff, and I realized, God, you're way bigger than these people.
Yeah.
And you're way bigger than this problem. And people are like, oh, you can't just flick a switch, Brodie. Yes, you can.
Mm-hmm.
You can stop and you can like look around you and give thanks and look around you and see the blessing and see the support and see the people and see the comfort, see it's there.
That's so good.
You just have to see it.
Welcome back to the Mezzanine Floor Podcast. I'm your host, Malachi. This is the podcast where we talk about living in the tension between heaven and earth. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure that you like, subscribe, and share. If you're listening on YouTube, make sure you follow KCC's YouTube page so you don't miss any episodes. If you're listening on Spotify or any podcast app, follow us on the Mezzanine Floor so you can stay in touch with us. I'm so excited to welcome a first-time guest. I'm always excited to welcome our guests, but a first-time guest, Brodie Kalamen. If we had a applause thing, we would be clapping so hard because it is such a privilege to have Pastor Brodie with us today. Pastor Brodie is our lead pastor. If you don't know him, he's our lead pastor of Kelowna Christian Center, and he's been the lead pastor for 9 years.
I have no idea.
Because I've been working here for 7.
Yeah, that would be.
And so
7
I think
plus.
I think that you were here a little bit earlier than that.
I'll take it.
Yeah. 9-ish years. We'll say 9-ish years.
I'll take it.
But the big milestone that you just celebrated was 30 years working here.
Yeah, that's incredible.
I would say that's incredible.
I didn't even know how many years I was working here until our HR department just kind of surprised me. I needed something for a passport, and they said, "How long have you been working for that place of employment?" And I said, "Let me get back to you." And they said, "Hey, you're on your 30 years." I'm like, "Man, I get a clock or something,
a plaque."
Yeah.
Are you gonna get a tattoo or?
I don't know. I'm coming.
I mean, that's pretty incredible though. Like 30 years is.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm 34, so that's literally a majority of my life. You've been working in ministry, working and doing ministry. That's also incredibly rare. Yeah. Like with the trends that you see, not only just in like employment. Like that's very rare for someone to work at one place, especially now.
Did I do something wrong?
Yeah.
Is there a problem with
They've
this?
just kept you here. It's not
Was
by
I
choice.
ever free to go?
Yeah.
No, I love our city. Kelowna is an amazing city. I think it's the best place in the world.
Yeah.
Like Canada is the most desired nation. In Canada, you have Kelowna, the most desired city in the world in Canada to live. It's like the jewel of the Okanagan. So, and in Kelowna, KCC, Kelowna Christian Center is the church.
It's obviously
church
the place
where God's
to be.
Put us.
Yeah.
So it's like the best place in the world for me. I've kind of rationalized it. Why would I ever move from this place? I am planted. I am here.
Well, that's amazing though. And you have obviously married. How long have you been married for?
Obviously married. You got me there at 20 years. It's
20 years. Wow.
Huge milestone was this last year, 20 years, celebrating with Natalie and we have 3 kids.
Yeah, 3 wonderful kids, actually. Like
Cade and Judah.
Probably the nicest. Like, if you've ever met Brodie's kids and met Brodie's family, like they're probably the nicest kids that I've met and like the most like well-behaved. We're like I'm not worried about my daughter growing up because there's going to be people like Evangeline around and just like great influences. I don't really know how you do it.
It was always a big question for me because I grew up like they're pastors' kids and there are all these little reels online about the damaged pastors' kids that are going on in the world. And these kids almost expect it. And the good news is my kids watch it and they can't identify with it. So I love the fact that I think that I actually give a lot of credit to the fact that we've been in a church that has watched them grow and watched me grow. And in terms, not just loves me, but loves my kids. And so there aren't just spiritual parents here. There's spiritual grandparents and our kids feel loved here. This is as much as their house as it is mine.
Yeah, it takes a village, right, to raise kids.
It does.
Not just 2 parents.
It takes a church.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I know you a little bit, and maybe the audience, maybe if you're listening for the first time, maybe you don't know Pastor Brodie. So let's get to know Pastor Brodie a little bit today before we get into the actual conversation. This is something that it's just nothing to worry about. No weird questions here.
Yeah.
Really, obviously we know what you've done for 30 years. You've worked at the church.
Sure.
But what do you like to do on your days off? And that's kind of, I say that in a funny way. If you know anything about
Days
ministry,
off.
right? Like sometimes you don't get a day off, but on the days off that you have, like, what's your
Yeah.
favorite hobby?
Oh man. Well, for us, I don't know if this is just the change and shift in pace, but on a day off and a nice day in Kelowna, you want to be at the beach. You want to be
Some of us.
down at the water. Yeah, at least watching the sunset coming down. I actually like getting up early now. That's a huge win for me. Is like if I can get up early, my wife's parents, they have e-bikes, like electric bikes.
Okay,
And we hop on those bikes and we go down trails early in the morning, end up downtown where it's all quiet, go coffee, food, just kind of it. So I know e-bikes is kind of cheating. It's not really
It's not exercise,
exercising.
yeah.
It's like, you have the choice whether you can pedal or not. And I'm like, no, we're not going to pedal. There's a battery on here for a reason.
Resting.
We're in a state of rest. It's my day off. We're gonna ride down the park and hit downtown for a little while. I love the people. I actually like on days off to travel. I like to see different parts of the Okanagan. I find new like hideaways and new little gems and that are here. Even though I grew up here, I still find things that really interest me. And so I just get really inquisitive and start looking into the world and trying to find those little sweet spots that I enjoy. So if it's like a cool new coffee place or if it's a cool new food or a specialty donut, I love it. I'm all in.
It's such a wholesome answer to a wholesome hobby that you have. Just loves the people. I want to be where the people are. That's definitely your Ariel. If so, the other question I have, and maybe you want to be a tour guide. I don't know.
Yeah, I think I would be
if you never became a pastor, what would you be? Probably a tour guide.
You know what? I think I would be. I love being with people on that level. There was always a criticism of me when I was in the back seat of the car with my family and my siblings. My brother and sister I would be talking them through things and explaining like these wonderful things that I encountered. And they would just be like, Mom, Dad, just make him stop.
He's got to stop talking.
He's got to stop. And I'd just share about the things that I saw or unique little tidbits that I knew and I could elevate to be special, even though it probably wasn't all that great. Yeah. But no, I think that would be great. At times I've thought it would be really cool to be a server. Like in a restaurant or a place where you're just meeting with lots of people and just bring a real excellence and professionalism to it. Because I think I could do that. Yeah. I think I would make it really special. I think I could make someone's special day really special.
Didn't you also want to be a dentist at one point in your life?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Is that like a long lost dream?
Oh man. I think that was, when you're a kid and you've got a few occupations that you could choose that could serve society and you're like, well, a doctor, a fireman, a dentist, and
fighter jet.
Yeah. Pilot, whatever that was.
Yeah.
At that time I had braces and I would walk into this dentist's office and I would think, man, I could do this job. And it seemed relatively, you make really good money.
Yeah.
And the outcome would be really sweet. But then as I got older, I thought, would I love to have my hands and fingers in someone else's mouth and all the different people that you encounter?
Not at all.
And I'm so glad God rescued me from that occupation.
As much as you love people,
journey.
People's mouths and in there is different. It's a different story.
I know. It's probably not meant for my fingers.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
Exactly. Well, kind of getting into our topic today.
Yeah.
It's pretty easy to look around and how the world is as a whole. And I would say that, we could probably both agree. It's a very busy, fast-paced world culture, you name it. Everything in our world is all about fast pace, fast food, fast technology. Everything has to happen now. You have this constant pressure that we kind of walk in as human beings nowadays. I feel like maybe if you live in a smaller town, it's a little bit different, but there's still that kind of pressure to, obviously there's pressure to make money. There's pressure to, make more and more and more and make, progress in your work and your jobs, to have things, to acquire things. And there's you kind of look around in our culture and there's that constant pressure. There's that constant mindset and worldview to like the grind, right? Or the hustle, right? There's this kind of like hustle about our world, and not obviously like not everyone ascribes to that, but the quote unquote successful people will say you got to hustle, you got to push, you got to go, you got to move. And so something that we wanted to talk about today is how do we, obviously in a busy world, in kind of like a success driven world culture that we live in, how do we find rest inside of that? Sure. And the one question that I do want to kind of pose at the beginning is, why is it so challenging for Christians to prioritize rest? And obviously, like, this is a Christian podcast, so we're talking about it in that way. And maybe not even only just Christians. How do you find rest in such a busy world, in such a culture that causes us to always constantly try to get more? And obviously, like, we know this as you grow up. It's not as if life gets less chaotic. It gets more added onto your plate, and there's more challenges and more responsibility. Rest itself can also be viewed negatively. I think that it has almost been viewed negatively, maybe as like a fallacy in the way that rest truly is. It's almost like if you rest, you're being unproductive. Or if you sit down, you're just being lazy, or if, you take that time off, you don't really need that time off. There's that constant pressure, even in the Christian circle, there's kind of like that value that's placed on, just doing and being busy. And so the question I want to start with is, like, how do we find rest? How does a Christian prioritize rest in their life?
Yeah. And I can qualify that, if you're in any form or function in society right now, you're having to work hard.
Yeah.
And the pressure is there to actually be productive. And
it's not a bad
bring
thing.
value.
It's not a bad thing.
No. Yeah. I look for that.
Yeah.
In people. Like, I want people around who are going to bring value, who are going to work hard, who are going to have an energy that they're contributing to not just the church, but to their effort, like to their work and to their legacy, because great things don't happen right away. Like, when you're talking about things I enjoy doing, like, I look back at my hobbies, and some of those things are like briskets. A brisket does not happen in an hour in a crock pot. A brisket happens over 16 hours of slow smoking to create a brisket. Sourdough bread.
Yeah. My wife is very much into that right now.
Does not take a short amount of time. You've got, like, my wife makes macaroons or macarons. I don't know
however you say them.
However you say it. She makes macarons. Those are not easy to make. It takes time to actually create something of value. So even though you've got this huge push in society that says, fast is beneficial, fast is good, and you have to learn how to slow down. And if you don't learn to slow down, you're going to end up injuring yourself and injuring your future.
Totally. Yeah.
And so I do think the question of how a Christian slows down has to go back to the very beginning. And you have to look at, starting from Genesis, you're looking at the element of the fact that God worked first, and that God actually went to work. And work is a gift, and work is an opportunity for us to be able to provide, like, value in the world. And it's actually a gift to us when we look back at our life and we say, look at what we were able to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Look what we were able to do with our day. I think that was probably part of the challenge of ministry for me, is that you're working with people, and people are just slow.
You don't see the result right away.
No, you work with a marriage. That marriage doesn't turn around because they had one meeting in your office. That marriage, or a person's life doesn't change on a Sunday morning in particular. But you can mow a lawn.
Yeah.
And the lawn looks terrible. It looks overgrown. Your yard looks terrible, and you mow that lawn or you rake those leaves.
Yeah, exactly.
And all of a sudden, your lawn looks better. So there are those elements that you have to contribute, but some things require more time.
Yeah.
So when we go into Scripture, we actually look at God's plan, and God's plan initially was to work.
Yeah. Yeah.
He worked. And he worked like 6 days a week. 6 days in that week were like work.
Yeah.
Which I think is really interesting because there was this pattern that was set from the very beginning of how we are to address our lifestyle. Mm-hmm. And then he took a day, and the God who doesn't grow tired.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like he needed a day off.
No, the God who doesn't grow tired he chose a day to take rest.
Yeah.
And so I think in our culture, we've flipped the script and we say, well, we want to work 1 day a week and rest 6 days. You go to any person, you say, what do you want to do for the rest of your life? Or what's your vision, or what's your goal for your future? And their goal for their future is going to be, well, I want to travel. I want to be able to live a recreational lifestyle if possible. And I don't want to work. And perhaps that's even a result of people taking breaks, and this cultural shift that happened even during COVID, where people were off work for months and months and months at a time. Or
it changes your
mentality.
mentality.
The economy shut down for years.
Yeah.
And people were waiting for things to come back, and they learned a different rhythm of their life instead of actually taking the rhythm that was placed there from the start.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I love that you mentioned even just Genesis. Like, I think first we go to the Bible and we kind of like, we understand what the Bible says. I think that's the best place. If you're a Christian, the best place to understand a principle, especially like rest. Like, why is rest important? What's the purpose of rest?
Yeah.
And how do we find rest? Obviously, I think there's 3 parts. Maybe there's more, but when I was researching this, there's kind of like the 3 parts. There's physical rest, there's spiritual rest, and there's a promise for eternal rest, right? And you mentioned the first kind of rest, and it's like that practical rest where you work first and then you rest. And obviously everybody knows this. You can't just work 24/7 or you're probably going to die, right? Yeah. So you have God, he kind of sets that precedent of it's like a rhythm of life. Yeah. Like you work and you see, it's like you're saying, like office work isn't always the most satisfying when you're doing like paperwork and you're working on spreadsheets.
You're not like in your sweet spot.
Yeah, you're not like building a house or those are really fulfilling jobs, like construction and whatever. I go and do a project. We just did our nursery. We just put some paint on the walls and we put some trim on the walls and it looks like a new room. And you look back, you're like, wow, like now I can honestly sit down and be happy.
That's where I've seen a number of ministers. When they do either retire or quit, or change direction because of either burnout or just fatigue, and they're just exhausted. They go to a place where they can actually experience that kind of quick fix. Because it's tiring. It gets people. Tiring. People are a joy. They were Jesus's purpose for his coming. They were his pursuit. They were his passion, but they are complicated. People are challenging.
It's true.
The most difficult leverage in terms of, if you're thinking from a leadership perspective, leveraging money, collateral, like your financial collateral is easy. You just put it to work. You just invest here and it'll return an investment. But with people, human collateral, human leverage, human people that you have to work with. If you want to put yourself in a place where you're working with people, it can get challenging. You've got emotions, you've got feelings,
motivations,
and you're carrying the weight of people's pain and their trauma and their history and the baggage that they have. But you're also carrying the joy and the celebrations and all the life that they bring and the connection that you experience when you're with people. So there is the tension.
Yeah.
Talking about tension.
Yeah, exactly.
God brought us here to work together, to create community, to create connection. And there can be a testing of that connection that can create fatigue, but it can also create joy. So
yeah. And it's
that's
interesting.
a huge other
it
topic,
is.
perhaps.
It's massive.
But the rest is usually from people, is
Yeah.
what people need rest from. It's
Yeah.
like they need to connect with their creator
Exactly.
to get recreated. And then that recreation is where you find true fulfillment again. The joy of the Lord becomes your strength.
Yeah.
The restoration that the shepherd brings, like he restores your soul.
Yeah.
You want that kind of restoration in your life. Those that wait on the Lord will renew their strength.
Yeah.
That kind of restoration doesn't come from people.
No.
That comes from the Lord.
Yeah.
And that's why I think people can make their money and create margin in their life to go and travel the world and buy all the things that they want to buy.
Yeah.
And they still are tired.
Yeah.
And they're still exhausted in life. And that would be that's like Ecclesiastes. That's a vanity of vanities. That's like an emptiness of emptiness. That's, I thought this would bring me fulfillment, and it doesn't. It's just smoke and mirrors.
Yeah.
Instead, the rest of God, the blessing of God is found in his presence. And that's where that seventh day, that's where that joy of actually knowing Jesus actually creates incredible fulfillment. And you won't know that. You won't know that peace until you know God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love that you said that word restoration, not just like rest. There's like physical rest and then restoration. And where I think of that is like kind of like the spiritual rest that God gives. It's not a rest that I can kind of attain. Like I can't work for restoration. No. Like God gives that to me. Yeah. And some of the verses that kind of popped in my mind was, Psalm 62 is truly my soul finds rest in God, right? Like I can't find my soul can't find rest in money. Like it can't find, like he has to give it to me. And I think that's really important to make that distinction, because like there's things that I can logically do. Like and the Bible talks about how like it's important, like, and that's the first thing that God does, right? He rests on the seventh day. He says, hey, like you don't have to be,
there's a pattern.
Yeah. There's a pattern. And then there's this other side of like, where, come to me who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest.
Yeah.
Right. Like God gives you that rest.
Yeah.
It's not something that, I can necessarily, like I can obviously position my life properly, and that takes practical steps, but it's not something that I can like almost like work for, if that makes sense. And I think that's really important to like understand, like that distinction that you said, restoration is what God brings.
Well, the unique factor is that God not only gives you the rest, but God actually gives you the burden.
Yeah.
So oftentimes God will give you something to carry.
Yeah.
And then he'll be responsible for helping you carry it.
Yeah.
But there is a burden. People like the job you have, the experience, the life, the culture you live in, there are so many burdens. And we can't avoid the burden. We don't want to avoid the burden.
Yeah.
The burden is what makes it great.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, we're going to carry this thing, and we're going to carry one another, and we're going to carry one another's burdens.
Yeah.
That's our challenge. That's what I should be doing for you, and you can be doing for me, where we carry each other's burdens. But that's almost like we bring that as a negative connotation to it, that we'll never be burdened.
Yeah.
But I found that the more I engage with the call of God on my life, and the more God directs me into open doors, the more I experience burdens.
Wow.
It's a weight of leadership. It's a weight of opportunities. It's a weight of new things. And so every time God brings me into a new place, it's a new burden.
Yeah.
And that's where, if you have that burden, God will create that place for rest for you.
And that grace.
That capacity. Or else, how else could you do the things that we need to do to actually reach the world?
Yeah.
Like, we've got a huge mission and a huge call. And if we stop at the fact that, man, this is
hard,
too much.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. Like, oh, I've only got capacity for this. And are you saying that God can't provide more capacity for you? Versus, yes, God, I embrace that mission. I embrace that calling. And now you're going to provide me even a greater measure of your grace.
Yeah.
In my weakness, you'll become strong. In my weakness, you'll be there.
Yeah.
And so I'm always challenged that way, because I think it comes to a place where you'll always face those giants.
Yeah. You're constantly going to be facing
You're going to be
facing
You're going to be facing that all the time.
Yeah.
And if you're looking for like a runway with nothing in front of you,
it's probably the wrong runway.
I'm thinking
you're probably
it
running
doesn't
down
exist. Something's wrong.
Yeah.
Something's wrong.
You're probably going the wrong direction.
You're going to have opposition.
Yeah.
You've got an enemy.
Yeah.
You've got an opposer. You've got someone who's out to accuse you. You're always going to be running into things. And so that's our reality.
And it's kind of like the final thing that I wanted to touch on inside of kind of like those three biblical views of rest and that eternal rest, where it's in Hebrews 4 where the writer kind of like uses the analogy of the promised land, where it's like, this is the rest that God promised, but it's like all they can see, like they get to the promised land. And I think you spoke a message on this. It was like, all they could see was the obstacles. All they could see was like the giants are in the way. All the enemies are already there.
The walls are thick.
The walls are thick. There's already established places that they have to like figure out how to get into and figure out how to take this land. But it's like, if that's all you focus on, obviously there's going to be like we said, there's going to be an obstacle. There's going to be a giant. There's going to be something in the way, and the only way that you're going to be able to walk towards it is trust that God has, said, hey, I want you to go this way. And that's really like the Hebrews kind of has this like tension between submission and effort, where it's like you have to submit to God in the way of like, I need to trust that God has me here, and there's a big old giant over there, and I have to submit to God, being like, okay, well, obviously I don't have the strength to take out that, or I don't have the strength to walk through that on my own. And it's that tension between like submission and effort, where we have to take the step, right? But we also have to trust. And that's the tension of where we find rest and where we find it, like how we're talking about how you need God's grace to actually enable you to walk into some of those things, right?
It's not only, it's a law of, it's the tension, but it's the law of attention. Like, what do you put your attention on?
Yeah.
You can put your attention on, the giant, or you can put your attention on the God who split the Red Sea, and sits back at camp in a pillar of fire and a cloud of smoke. And when he speaks from a mountain, the lightning and thunder are like go before him. Yeah. And so you can either choose that, and who sends manna and birds on the weekends, and food and makes your sandals not run, your soles run down. Yeah. And you're out in the desert and your clothes don't wear and tear, or you can see a giant. Yeah. So you got to place your attention on things, the right things, and talk about that tension between heaven and earth. It's constantly having to be redirected towards, Lord, you are more than enough. Yeah. You have got the abundance. I can see my need, but I see your ability. I can see my weakness, but I can see your strength. And you're living within that tension so that you don't become anxious in your soul, and your soul doesn't feel the injury of that. It doesn't get depressed in its encounter, or in the encounter of that giant, because you're going to be feeling, no, I can go after that giant. Like there were 2 out of 10, 2 out of 12, right? Yeah. So 1 out of 6 that actually had their attention on the right thing.
Yeah, which is wild.
Which is wild. And they were blessed because of it.
Yeah.
They were honored because of it. But you have to place your attention on those things. And unfortunately, we put our attention on, in our life oftentimes, like if you ask people, how are they doing? They're going to say what? I'm busy. I'm tired.
Yeah.
Oh man, I'm so worn down. I've been feeling sick. I'm feeling just heavy today. Or they've got all these polite cultural ways to say that they're not doing well.
Yeah.
And I just refuse to go there myself.
Yeah.
I just refuse to do it. And I have people in my life who are like, well, it doesn't sound like you're being very honest with us. We prefer you to be. I'm like, you want me to talk about how I'm really feeling right now and put my attention on this? I'm feeling stressed and anxious and overwhelmed and feeling small. And I feel like a victim and not the victor. You have to change your mindset. It's a huge shift to not be conformed to the ways of this world, but be transformed by renewing your mind to God's ways of seeing the beauty, seeing the abundance, seeing the yes of God, seeing his promise, seeing his rest in the moment of like, man, you'll read Psalm 23 at the table, he prepares a table before you in the presence of your enemies.
Yeah. In the presence of pressure all around him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's your shepherd. He just stands there and prepares a table for you. What a boss. Like, what a boss move. It's just a boss moment there where it's like, I can sit with God, even though I'm in a valley.
Yeah.
I'm not alone. And God prepares a table before me.
Yeah.
And the Lord is with me. And I don't have to fear. I don't have to be afraid. So I can't give room. I don't want to give the enemy a crack or a foothold in my life that will take me from experiencing the blessing, even though there may be pain in the moment.
Yeah.
So, a lot of people, they go to their world with that in front of them, and they put that in front, and that becomes their narrative, and that becomes their story, and then that becomes their belief, and their attraction, and they create what they see.
Wow.
And so when they're creating what they see, it's not the story they want, but they're creating it by what they see. So stop and actually create something that's worth seeing, and you'll actually change your mind. And stop. Stop. You just have to stop. And people are like, oh, you can't just flick a switch, Brodie. Yes, you can. You can stop, and you can like look around you and give thanks, and look around you and see the blessing, and see the support, and see the people, and see the comfort, and see it's there.
That's so good.
You just have to see it. You have to embrace it, and you have to believe it.
Yeah.
And then you don't see the giants anymore. Like Joshua and Caleb are like, let's go in.
Yeah, who cares?
I've got this.
Yeah.
Like, let's take it today. Let's go right now. Like, let's not wait another moment. Because oftentimes the answer and the solution are right in front of you.
Yeah.
And that's what's so tragic when people instead embrace a different mindset, is that the answer and the solution is right there, and they can't see it because of the filter that's in front of them. They're either looking through a lie, they're looking through a mask, they're looking through a narrative that people around them, forecast. And because of it, they see clouds where other people see a blue sky.
Yeah.
And I just refuse to go to the clouds.
Well,
that way.
It's so interesting because it is one thing to like, obviously you're saying like people just want you to be honest.
Yeah.
And it's okay to be honest about things.
Sure.
But it's a difference between, and I like that you said that there is a difference. There's a difference in what you like put your attention on and that focus point, because I think that's really important to understand, because there's a difference between acknowledging something exists and focusing on it.
Yeah.
Right. Like I acknowledge that there's pressures. Like I acknowledge that the economy is awful. I acknowledge that trying to, get into a house is really difficult if you're trying to get into a house right now. I acknowledge that, maybe you have like a struggle within like your own mental capacity. I acknowledge, that sometimes I get anxiety, but am I going to just, if I had to preach a sermon on Sunday and I'm just thinking about, I'm so anxious, I'm so scared, or they're not going to like what I'm going to say, then I'm going to get up there and I'm going to probably preach the worst sermon that you probably ever heard in your life, right? Like, but that's every single day that we have to kind of like, okay, I acknowledge these things, and that's where you go to God, right? Like, and I love that you kind of went there, because there is a switch that you do have to flip.
Yeah,
you have to probably physically switch it, and you might have to switch it every day.
Yeah,
like you might have to go back to the switch and be like, okay, who turned this light back off? Right? Like, it was me. Like I gotta change my mentality. I gotta go to the God, and I gotta go to the Word, and and there's that renewing, like that word, renewing of your mind. Paul talks about renewing your mind daily, because I mean, obviously, if we're honest, like that's where the battles happen most of the time, is in our mindset and how we view things and our focus and our attention.
It really comes down to the simple practice. Think on these things. Think on these things that are noble, good report, uplifting, encouraging, beneficial. Like think on those things, holy, reputable. Think on those things. Put your attention on those things. Fix your eyes on the prize. Fix your eyes on that finish line. And actually pursue it, and you'll get there. But so that can take a lot of the weight off your life that you're carrying yourself, and actually share it with the one who's there to care for you. And that's where you find a lot of rest, is that I know I'm not in this alone. Like I remember in my life, I had a really rough meeting early on. We were reaching a lot of students in youth ministry. We had drug dealers coming onto the parking lot and trying to sell drugs to our students. We had to lock doors. We had to, they were aggressive. They were trying to find a way to kind of hit this new market of our youth group. And we had some well-meaning leaders and people in the church who tried to just lead and help us through this. And they became really critical of what I was doing and how I was doing it. And I understand it. Like I was young, not perfect, and maybe we weren't handling it the way it perfectly could have been. But afterwards, I felt defeated. I felt like, what am I doing? And it just felt like I was at the end of my rope. And I remember going to visit a friend of mine in Banff. And if you know anything about that area, it's like you have to drive through the Rocky Mountains. And I was almost lamenting a bit and sitting in my self-pity and I deserve to be hurt and injured and upset. And what they did was unjust and etc. And I was just kind of lamenting, and I'm going through the Rockies, and you just can't help but be struck with the wonder of God.
It's pretty incredible to drive through there.
And I was driving, and it didn't take me very long before I hit Banff, and I realized, God, you're way bigger than these people. And you're way bigger than this problem. And I can submit to you. I can do my best. I can do what you've called me to do. And then I can leave the rest up to you. So that was a moment in my life where I just learned to release it. Release it to God. And I had a great time in Banff, by the way. By the way, I really had a great time in Banff and made some great memories. And it was awesome. It didn't interrupt my life, and it didn't become my story. And it didn't affect my future, which could have been something that would have affected my family and the legacy that we're building.
It could have caused you to quit too, right? Like that. I mean, a lot of people would quit for less things.
And it was just like a little insult that got under my skin and started pulling me down, and it became an anchor. And I just like, no, I got to put my anchor in the hope,
Yeah.
in the hope. I got to anchor to the hope, not anchor to the the accusations and the pain. Anchor to the hope that was there, and that hope actually lifted me up.
Yeah.
Which is kind of ironic.
Yeah.
But it does.
Yeah.
That's how it works.
Well, it kind of leads me into the next, maybe it's a question, but like kind of maybe some more experience of what you have. Because obviously 30 years in ministry,
Yeah.
you probably experienced the very common thing I feel like a lot of people know about right now, and that word is burnout.
Oh yeah.
Where you just feel like you're saying, like just
Yeah.
angry or frustrated, or maybe you feel numb to things. Maybe you just feel like, I don't want to try anymore. Like everything I've done, no one appreciates it. Or maybe you just feel like completely just numb to everything. You don't want to get up. You don't want to wake up. You don't want to go to work. Have you ever experienced that, first of all? And I'm sure you have. 30 years in ministry working with people. I'm guaranteeing you, maybe you dealt with it differently than some people do. Obviously you're still here.
Yeah.
So you haven't quit.
No.
So that's a great, testimony in its own. But, have you experienced burnout, and what can you do to get out of? I know you kind of alluded to a few things there, but like, what's kind of like the pathways out of those? Because I think burnout is inevitable to some degree. It's kind of just what you choose to do with it when it starts to come on you, or when you start to feel like that, physical, mental battle.
Yeah. That's a great question, because I think burnout affects people differently.
Sure.
Certain people are affected through different weights. So there's some things I can carry that are easier for me to carry than other people.
Sure.
For example, I've always felt like a son of the house, a son. And that's different than just an employee of our church. I felt like a son here. So I carry this almost diplomatic, not immunity, but like a sense of, this is my house.
Yeah.
I helped build it.
Yeah.
I helped.
You can't get rid of me.
No, you can't. Like I'm not going to leave.
Yeah.
So I carry this sense of adoption here, where I've been adopted into this family and I feel secure here. Some people come and they don't have that same experience. Maybe they come from a school or they're a staff person and they're learning that community, but we carry a very relational model here.
Yeah.
So I don't have that same weight that they carry. So burnout comes in different ways and in different fashions. For me, that weight came from the unknown. Over 30 years, I can probably point back to 10 different scenarios where literally an email came in, or a text message is dropped off, or a letter is presented that shifts your whole structure, shifts your whole plans, your whole method of doing the work that you're doing, and now you're left holding the bag.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh no. And your personal ego, your identity is wrapped up in this. You don't want it to fail.
Yeah.
Number one, you don't want it to affect the reputation of the church. You don't want it to affect the reputation of other people. You want to cover, you want to heal, you want to help. And at the same time, you want to continue. And it could be internally, it could be a governmental shutdown that happened for us in BC, in British Columbia, was like years of wait until next week, wait until next week, and then you'll be able to meet, and wait until this happens. Like that was a huge, no one had ever gone through a similar situation, and no one had a similar answer to how to get through it. So you're just kind of flying by the seat of your pants each week.
Yeah.
And
trying
hoping
things and
hoping you're not going to get shut down by doing the little that you are doing. So I know that those things happen and that burnout is there. Those are times, honestly, where I lean in on others. Yeah. To be honest, I lean on the Lord. I think that's what we've talked about.
Yeah, totally.
But I also feel like the scripture says if a person's walking alone, you pity that man who walks alone.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Because if he falls, there's no one there to help him up and pick him up. So your investment and the equity in your life has got to be placed in people and friends and community, so that when you're experiencing those challenges, you've got people in your life who can say, hey, I'll step in and I can help, and I'm on your side, and
Yeah.
I'm in your corner, and they can help you along the way. And that to me is a huge rest factor from the hustle in life, is that you've got that rest, that I'm not alone.
Yeah, that's
I've got
totally-
somebody
yeah.
with me. I've got this great community of people that are here, and there's authenticity, there's proximity. I can give them a call, I can send them a text message. They're going to be here when in a few minutes. Hey, I'll be there.
Yeah.
Last night I finished a meeting here at the church at we were probably here at 9:00 or so.
Man.
And I had no vehicle. Just
Just
chain of
stranded.
events. Someone had needed to be picked up at the airport, and someone needed to be dropped off, and I had no vehicle. And I just walked up, like someone was there. I'm like, hey, who ended up being Bruce from our last podcast.
Yeah.
I'm like, Bruce, can you help me out? And he's like, gotcha. And he just opens the door, and I've got to ride
No
home.
problem.
No,
Yeah.
we left Brian at the church, but
Brian can walk. He lives so close.
so close.
Who cares?
But you know what? You've got people in your life, and like my wife's like, how are you going to get home? I'm like, I got friends. I got people in my life.
Yeah.
I got people there who can carry a simple thing like, I need a ride home.
Yeah.
They've got me. Obviously, you can always call an Uber or like a taxi or whatever you needed. There's always a way, but
Yeah.
to know you've got people in your life, that makes a huge difference. So you have to build into that. You have to create deposits
That's right. Yeah.
with that in your life. And that's probably the area where, as your life gets more expansive, the less opportunity you have to actually build into those relationships.
And there's a flip side of that too.
Yeah.
And I think we were talking about this yesterday,
Okay.
where there's like the answers have people in your life.
Yeah.
But then the problem
Yeah.
is having people in your
Yeah.
life, right?
There's the
Like
dichotomy.
there's also people that are,
Yeah.
I think you called them the energy vampires or
Oh
something.
yeah. Gee.
Right. Like,
Yeah.
that's another thing that can lead us to burnout, where even in your story, when you're in youth ministry, you had people that were negative.
Yeah.
There was people that were, critical. And I think there's a line of criticalness that you need to have in your life.
Yeah.
But sometimes it can be more offensive or hurtful in a way. So how do you then balance that piece, or how do you walk that line of discovering there may be some people that I need to.
Well, I've been
out.
a lot better at protecting my internal space and the people in my life, that they don't like. The people in my life are professional. They're people who have, a lot, they've lived life.
Yeah.
But I also I love having young people. I love having older people. I love creating this community around me. But the people in my life aren't just there for the drama.
Yeah.
For me, drama just drains me. Drains me because it's like it holds you back from where you want to go and where you're wanting. And I understand in life there are challenges and there are obstacles, and we're facing them all the time.
Yeah.
And we're always trying to advance to get past that area. But you got to be careful that you don't allow people who will just drain you of your life source.
Yeah.
They're
Vampires.
they're just people who nothing is good enough. Nothing is, they're not there to contribute. They're there to take. And I'm just more and more cautious of it, so that I'm surrounding myself with people of like faith, like capacity, and I'm growing with those people. And so I like that. And honestly, it's sometimes it's been an adjustment, because as your life moves on And I'm reaching that space where some people in their life, they're like, I'm done. I'm done like advancing.
They're tired. They don't want to.
They're just done advancing.
Evolve
And I'm not at that place. But we've lived so much of our life together that we're so close. But I'm realizing I'm still moving. So you got to keep moving. Like that really comes down to a conversation between us.
Yeah.
And I have to say, are you going to move with me here? Are you going to move in the direction where I'm moving? Because I really want you by my side, but I want you with not just me, but I want to be with you.
Yeah.
But if you've stopped and you've stopped, I can't go that route. And you're going to be constantly pulling me into that world. And I've got a mission to fulfill.
Yeah.
Or a mission to accomplish.
Yeah.
And it sounds like, wow, you seem to be really mission driven. It's like, no, I just know that I've got a plan.
Yeah.
And I take it really seriously, where I think, God, do your work and don't work before men only, but work before the Lord to show yourself approved unto God. Like at the end of the day, I'm going to stand before him and say, this is what you called me to do. And I've got to do it. And I've got to apply my strength, my mental emotion, my intelligence, my health, like my physical energy to doing it.
Yeah.
So I need people around me who contribute with that same intelligence and energy.
People that actually bring value to you.
Yeah.
And you to them.
And me to them.
Versa.
It's got to be both ways. Like it's reciprocal. Yeah. And sometimes it's a challenge to kind of find that, but I've been privileged, and I think that's the reward of staying rooted in the house of God.
Totally.
In the same house is that you walk your walk, you live with people and you know people. Yeah. And you can draw on that equity that you have with someone, and you don't have to earn it. It's already there.
It's there. Yeah.
It's there. So I love a community like that. And I think there's nothing better in the world than that.
Yeah. Another thing that can, kind of just going off of the topic of burnout, I think that we had talked about this quite a bit actually before we even came up with the idea of doing the podcast on this. But it's kind of like the fallacy of trying to escape life, right? And especially this comes up when we are, feeling burnt out, right? We often mistake a day off is going to give us the rest that we needed, right? Or the rest that we were desiring. Or I've even fallen into this trap where it's like I take a vacation. I'm sure a lot of you have taken a vacation and you've come back more tired and you don't want to go back to work, and you don't feel rested. You don't feel energized. You don't feel good. Like you just feel drained, and you've spent money to go there. So you feel worse about going. And there's kind of like that fallacy of like, taking those. Maybe it's more of a mentality too, because it's like, I'm just trying to escape whatever I'm in right now. I just, you've probably, I've said it where I just need a day off. I just need a vacation.
Sure.
And sometimes those are good. Like,
take it.
Sometimes those are like literally like, this is kind of like life or death for me right now. I need to just physically remove myself.
Sure.
I'm not talking about that, but there's like that philosophy of, I just need to go on a vacation, and it's going to solve. And it's almost like people think they're going to solve that void maybe that they have, or maybe that feeling inside of them that's just like maybe they're just burnt out, and that's where it comes from. And so I want to ask the question, like, why do you think that doesn't work, or why do you think that's happening?
Well, you end up coming back to like more emails, more calendars, more missed meetings,
more problems,
it just waited until you got back, and so. I find that instead of actually finding a day, like, oh, my organization gives me 3 weeks holiday or 4 weeks holidays, that great. You have that time off. Use it. Take it. In fact,
it's important.
It's required.
You have to legally take it.
Legally take it. Yeah.
Take a vacation.
Which is, that's really important that happens.
Yeah.
But in that situation, like when when you're instead of that, you have to build a rhythm of life that's organically restful, organically resting. And that is probably more of the goal and the outcome you want to achieve in your life.
Yeah.
That says, I'm going to find a way to actually find rest every day. If not, resting now, like I am in a resting state now.
Yeah.
In my job, in my work, in my preparation, in my conversations, that's the goal.
Yeah.
Not to be like, I'm going to live stressed 8 hours a day and then not be stressed
for 2 weeks in Hawaii
or 1 day a week when you have your Saturday off or your Friday, Saturday off. And it's like, oh, I cannot be stressed. I'm going to live life then. Or else you live this life where it's like Friday's wine o'clock.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to just live my life so I can.
Living for the weekend.
Living for the weekend and living for the evenings. And I can just veg out now instead of actually developing a lifestyle of rest in your world. And so I start it personally, internally. I have to evaluate myself internally. Then I have to evaluate like my home and look at my home. And yes, systems, structures, a pattern, like there needs to be some leadership that goes on. I think some families I hear like they're always working at on their house. And they're always working. I'm like, maybe you stack it and you work like 1 week straight on your house, whatever it may be, and then take time, like stack your work perhaps. And maybe that provides some energy back into your
maybe you
world.
have some extra margin for it, or you have a plan that you can actually like plan out that, okay, this is going to be crazy, but we're going to do it together, right?
We're going to do it together instead of this being like this overwhelming weight that sits on your shoulders for the rest of your life. Or you're impending, it's impending and it
like
feels
the doom.
It's like just you're carrying this burden all the time. So then I look at my home and then I look at my work and I try and create a pattern for rest. And I look at my energy in that space and I say, look, where are you providing the energy? Like, what are the values? What are the things that contribute to rest in my life that I need? So my devotions, my time with my kids, my time with my family, my time with the church, my time, that has to be allocated and assessed. And so systems matter, but I also want to create margin. Margin is so important because I think margin exists for God moments. And if your life is so regulated and so regimented that you have no time for God to do something, God, like for that conversation with a neighbor, for you just living in that world where you drive up to your house and you go inside and no one knows your name and you haven't got that connection with people. How do you create that margin? Space, and each person needs to look at their rest, I think, individually and look at it in terms of building a rhythm of that in your life. And that means sometimes creating that date night, creating that space with friends and actually going out for dinner or getting on that bike early morning and going for a ride while the sun's
biking.
And not biking until the sun comes up. Or it's planning that event and planning that holiday that special holiday where you're going to make memories and just reset for the next step. All those things matter. But I don't ascribe to the 3 weeks a year will take care of the 52 weeks in the year. You just can't live that way. And I haven't found a way to do it. So if someone does, they're welcome to hit me up and share with me their secret, but it just doesn't, I just don't see it happening. And from my perspective, I can't see it happening. So.
And I like that you said that word margin too. And I think too, like we hear us properly. We're not saying vacations are bad.
No.
Like saying days off are bad. We're not saying you're a sinner for taking a vacation. Like, but I see what you're saying, creating margin and creating like the rhythm. And that's kind of like what like God set in the beginning. We said that word rhythm. And I love that. Like we need physical rest. Like we need, like we were saying, you need to take a day off. Take a day off.
Take a day off.
Yeah. Like even like the funny example I had in the Bible was when Elijah, he's the prophet, he's running for his life from Jezebel, essentially, like he's going to die. And he comes to the point where he actually asks God, like, please kill me. I can't take this anymore.
Yeah.
And he causes him to go into like take a nap, right? Like like go to sleep, and then an angel wakes him up and then gives him some food. And it's like sometimes you just need to just go to bed, eat some food, and move on. Right. And sometimes it could be simple. Like sometimes you might be experiencing burnout because you're just taking things too seriously. Or maybe you're just like, you're trying to like find this equation that solves it. Sometimes you just need to go to bed and eat some food. Right. Maybe it's that trip. Maybe it's that guy's trip, or maybe it's that girl's trip, or maybe it's that, thing that you wanted to buy yourself, and whatever. Like, is it going to solve your problem? No, but maybe it's going to help you discover something about that. Right.
I used to be that kid who, where my parents were saying, I'd be studying at night for a university exam, and I'd be studying. And then my dad would say, you just go to bed. And my dad was like educated, capable.
Yeah. He's pretty serious about that stuff.
Yeah, he's like, go to bed. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. I need to study. He's like, the best thing for you to do right now is just to go to sleep. Go to bed. You're going to wake up and you're going to be fresh. And then study and review this stuff. But you're not doing any good. Like there's a lot of research on this too that is clear that doesn't work for you to just run yourself empty.
Yeah.
And then you go to a test running empty. Well, I find myself doing that to my kids now. Just go to bed. They're like, no, you don't understand. And there's this natural pushback in us to think that striving will actually create a better outcome. And I think that the best hustle is sometimes because there are the 6 days and you want to work hard and you want to honor God with your work. Those 6 days matter, but there is a time when you just have to rest. Like you slow that hustle down and you pause for a moment and you rest and you're okay. And you allow your body to recoup. Like, I don't know one trainer out there who says, I want you to work out legs. The next morning, I want you to work out legs. The next day, work out legs. No trainer is going to train you in that. They're going to say, you need to take a day to recover those muscle groups. Well, why? Because everything needs recovery. Even the land. Like Jewish, there was a season of time where they weren't even allowed to plant on the ground.
Yeah, that's right.
To let the earth replenish and to recover. So we're just as important. You have to look at your schedule, and instead of just seeing all the work, you have to see the recovery. Yeah. That part has to be a part of the equation at least. Yeah. And value it. Don't make it your idol.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't make recreation your idol. Yeah. Don't displace the church and displace the Lord for recreation, which in our community where recreation is a huge
especially in Kelowna.
Is a huge draw. And there's all this attractive element of like just use your weekends to kind of bend. Like it's selfish. It's about yourself. Yeah. And that'll be the best recreation. Instead of that, don't displace the Lord in it, because you won't get out of it what you think you should. You won't get out of it what you can if the Lord is first and primary in your life. That's where true recovery comes from. Yeah.
And that's kind of like the final part of what I wanted to talk about today. And I think you mentioned it, and you said walking in rest, which I think is literally perfect because that's what I had written down. And it kind of pertains to, you had mentioned like the Sabbath and how, God, rested on the seventh day. Yeah. And obviously I think for when you read about the Sabbath in the Old Testament, it looks different for us today as New Testament Christians. Like, not that we don't throw the principle of the Sabbath away. I think there's Obviously, like you've been to Israel,
Yeah.
and I think you're talking about how like the elevators,
Yeah.
like there's no,
You don't,
they're
on
all
that
automatic.
day, you get on the elevator opens for you and closes and moves. You don't even push a button.
Yeah,
It's that strict.
yeah,
You don't work.
yeah.
Like,
And it's the principle of it's good, and I think that
Yeah.
the idea of the Sabbath, like we don't work on this day,
Yeah.
we don't do anything on this day. Some people have taken it so literally where they don't even have church on Sunday,
Yeah.
which I think is kind of odd. But like if that's what you want to do, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
But for us, I think to understand what the Sabbath means for us now is it's exactly what you said. It's walking in rest. It's walking with the knowledge that God is with me. It's walking like being confident that I don't have to, work to be acceptable to God. I don't have to labor. And that's kind of like where we get that thought process of like Jesus has become the Sabbath for us now.
That's
Where
amazing.
before, we look at the Old Testament, they had to perform, like the people in the Old Testament, they had to perform these rituals and these sacrifices to be acceptable. So there's a laboring that was involved, and you said the word striving. It's almost like striving is popular in our culture. We strive to do something. We strive to get people to like us, and we do the same thing with God, where we almost like that's where we get burnout, where we striving to be acceptable. Where Jesus has come, He's made the sacrifice, the ultimate sacrifice, and we no longer have to labor. And so I love that you said, walking in rest, because that's literally what we should be doing.
Yeah.
We should be walking. Like it's kind of like, how do I have rest when life is overwhelming? Well, you have to kind of learn that rhythm of understanding like who God is in your life and where He is in your life and where He's speaking. And I think we talked about this with your dad and praying without ceasing. It's like you're constantly listening. You're constantly you're walking with an acknowledgement that I'm walking in the presence of God wherever I go, because He's with me. Yeah,
You're abiding with Christ.
And so, maybe some practical like thoughts at the end of this is, what can that look like for us today as we walk? Like, how do we walk in the Sabbath, daily? It's obviously, I think like Sunday is a really important thing. I think when we go to church on Sunday, I think that's part of like, it could be a part of your Sabbath, but I think it's more important to like go back to that point where you're constantly walking in that state of I'm walking at rest, like when you're resting heart rate, right? Like when you're able to kind of just walk through life and it's not that life's never going to bother you. It's not that, obstacles are never going to throw you off. It's not like you're going to,
and I don't want to paint these rose. I don't want to
exactly.
paint with these rose-colored glasses on that.
No,
everything in life is going to be great if you learn how to rest. Is perfect.
Yeah, exactly.
Ambient lifestyle.
But we are saying there's a way that you can start to walk towards that, and obviously you're not going to be perfect, and you need people around you, and you need community, and we're not going to.
So I can make a comment.
Yeah.
A comment there would be, a huge shift in my life came when I recognized that my life was hidden with Christ in God. And when my life was hidden with Christ in God, and the gospel in a nutshell was that you have Christ in you, the hope of glory is actually in you.
Yeah.
It's not something that you have to attain externally through your works. It's not something you have to do, but that you actually become a son of God, which is, there's a different rest that comes when you're a son, versus a worker or a laborer. There's a different rest that comes that says, I've got a father, and I've been chosen to walk with my father in this relationship that's not unnatural. It's father-son. It's relational. It's covenanted. It's loving. It's protective. It's identifying. It's I'm with you, and if you need help, I've got you. It's that sense of relationship is different than me working to try and prove or find the approval
Yeah.
of someone,
Mm-hmm.
my master.
Yeah.
My master. Like I have to prove myself. I have I have to create value for myself instead of realizing as a son, I am valued.
Yeah, that's right.
I am valued already. Already. So that immediately puts you in a place of rest
Yeah.
that says, I don't need to do one more thing to be loved. I don't have to do one more thing to be approved or to be. But what it does in me is it says, now I can be about my Father's business.
Yeah.
What's his business? Put me in, coach.
Yeah.
I want to play.
Yeah.
I want to be a part of this because what an awesome business this is. We're bringing life to a world. We're telling people that dead things can come, like what was once dead can be alive. What was once lost can be found. What was once, separated can be now connected. And you too can become a part of this family.
Yeah.
Like, what a message of good news. You were poor, you can become rich. Whatever that, like that prospering, wholesome, life full, spirit full life that God has for us. It's like the balloon is full. It's not deflated. It's full to the max. That John 10:10, the enemy comes to rob, kill, steal, and destroy. But Jesus came that we would have life and life to abundance. That's our message. Well, that is a whole different approach to life. And for me, it's about that daily Sabbath is you are that temple.
Yeah.
You do house Christ. Christ is in you. He's hidden he's hidden in you. Like he can't be taken away.
Yeah.
He's a part. And now we have the opportunity to walk in this hope and walk and experience his glory, which is like a deeper word.
Yeah.
But that word is heavy. It's weighed. It's valuable. It's got a glory to it. It's got a wonder and an awe and a life to it. And that's our walk. And that walk can't be stripped away from us.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
that's beautiful though. I love that.
I love that Sabbath. And that Sabbath, I want to wake up to that every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to go to bed with that every day. I want to raise my family with that Sabbath mentality that says we're with the Father.
Yeah. And that comes to really like the key of maybe not key, that's kind of sounds cheesy, but like a really real understanding of your identity.
Yes.
Right. Like, and you said the word son, like you understand your identity. And when you do, you can actually walk with peace. You can walk with rest. You can walk in a new light.
Yeah.
Not that everything's going to be perfect.
No.
But and it's constantly going back to that, reminding myself of who we are. Remind yourself who you are in Christ. And it's obviously not like a immediate thing that happens. It's a lifestyle.
The kingdom of
right?
heaven suffers violence. And it's the violent who take it by force. Like there's a violence in life. There's a violence in terms of the advancement of the kingdom. There's a place of injustice in the world, and there's a place of justice that has to overtake that injustice. And when I look at the life of Jesus, I see him as he looked over Jerusalem and he wept. Mm-hmm. He wept over the lost, and he cried over the city, and he recognized the people. Like there was anguish in him for the world, and it wasn't easy, but he still, like, life isn't just easy. This life we've been given isn't a life of ease. No. But the life that we've been given is a life that we don't have to walk alone in.
Yeah, exactly.
And we can walk along holding the hand of the Father, and that in itself just provides I'm with Dad. Yeah. I'm with Dad.
Yeah.
And if you haven't got that revelation of what that's like, and I know I've learned it, and I've had to understand it, because it doesn't come naturally.
Yeah.
But once you understand that, and you break apart the lies that the enemy has, that you have to somehow earn this right and earn this way into his home and into favor. But you realize that you are highly favored. He has got you on his eye, and he has created you on purpose. You're his workmanship, and he's made you perfect and blameless and he's given you grace and given you a mission and given you and called you. Man, when you realize that, there's just a joy that comes into the work. Is like, is it really work?
Yeah.
Like, is it really work?
Exactly, yeah.
Do I complain?
Yeah.
I don't know. And maybe I'm just at that state at this point, at this podcast.
Yeah.
That I'm like,
he's feeling good today.
No, I'm feeling it's, I'm feeling bright about the future. And despite what even goes on in the world. And so those things like those things that the culture tries to drag you down with, media, the news, the politics, all those things don't matter.
No, not in the long game.
Honestly, people spend a lot of energy going there, and trust me, when I watch like those debates and I watch the election, my heart's pumping, and and I'm like, oh, what's going on?
Yeah.
Like, I'm engaged, but at the end of the day, it's my first priority is the Father and what He's doing. So, if you can connect to that Sabbath and live in that shalom, that peace, that's body, mind, soul, spirit, it's security, it's comfort, it's resource. You live in that shalom, you're going to be okay.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. I really appreciate your thoughts and having you on today. Here's to another 30 years.
Yay!
I don't know if you got
30
any water
years.
there, but
come on, better at 85, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Better at 85.
Here's to another 30 years.
Take a mountain, Malachi.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for tuning in today. And we hope that you enjoyed today's topic. We know it's probably something that I would say everyone deals with. And so we hope that it encourages you, it equips you, and it empowers you. So like and share this video if you enjoyed today. Share it with a friend who's dealing with this kind of stuff or burnout, or stick close to each other. Gravitate towards. Find a church to go to. Honestly, like come to church on Sunday. We'll talk to you. We'll say hi to you.
Absolutely.
And you never know what a group of people can do, and especially the church. I think it's the best
game
thing.
changer.
Yeah, it's the best thing for the world. So if you like today, share this on Apple, Spotify, share it to a friend. We hope that you enjoyed it, and we'll see you back next time on the mezzanine floor.